What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. You know who I am. I am your host, as always, Blaine Spencer. I have a returning guest with me, Rich Behan, and he is now the man behind the scenes of the legend that is the St. Peter's Peacock. He was on that tournament run that led the St. Peter's Peacocks into the Elite Eight. He was with the team throughout. Rich, thank you for joining me. We're going to be talking a lot of Peacocks today, as well as some breaking news that actually transpired for your Peacocks in the last couple hours. How are you? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. This has been a long time coming. I know you've been trying to set this up for a few weeks, and then we just kept winning. So then, we go from down in Atlantic City from the MAC tournament. We go right to Indianapolis. Then we get through Indy. We come back. I think we spent a day and a half in New Jersey, and then we were already on the road to Philly again. And then, unfortunately, our journey ended on Sunday in Philly. But, it was I'm sure we'll get into it more, but just an unbelievable experience that really, you couldn't see coming.
Yeah, and that's actually where I really want to start. Can you describe what this behind the scenes, what this run was actually transpiring with? Coach Holloway has now come to our alma mater, Seton Hall. But what was that? Just describe the experience for us in that last 3 to 4 weeks of just absolute insanity. That's how I can only describe it with what happened with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll take you all the way back to Atlantic City for the MAC tournament. We had gotten down there. I think I got down there Monday or whatever. And I stayed the whole week because obviously I was there for St. Peter's, but I was also doing some work for the MAC as well. So I was actually the timeout coordinator for the Iona game against Ryder. And, we were sitting there, and I mean, that was a tremendous game. Ryder obviously able to pull it out and knock Iona out in the first round. And it was kind of like, I'm sitting there kind of taking it in as just a fan of basketball in general. And I was like, hey, this is a really good game. But then I kind of took a step back and I was like, you know what? This is kind of the road just cleared. The biggest roadblock just cleared for the Peacocks to make the tournament. And then, you fast forward to Sunday and the St. Peter's took care of business, and you're like, okay, now we're going to Indianapolis. So we got back to campus. A few days went by, and at first we weren't even going. It was only going to be the men's basketball contact, Doug Waters, my boss, and it was originally just going to be him. And then I think. What do we play on Friday, Sunday? That we were Friday, Sunday, or Thursday, Saturday, whatever it was. I forget. It was the day before the Kentucky game. And all of a sudden they were like, no, you guys can go go down, go across, I guess at that point.
No, I remember that because I was texting you about it when you guys got in. I was like, please tell me you're going. You're like, I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, everything was so up in the air, and originally we were told no, and then last minute we were sent down there, and thankfully we were, because we ended up in the Elite Eight. But we get down there, and it was the day of the game. We get our content out and everything, and I'm sitting the second row of the scorers table with my boss. We were there. The other GA, Steve, was doing video. He did it for the whole tournament, did a fantastic job. And, we win the Kentucky game. And, I haven't been shy about this. We won. And honestly, we didn't know what to do. We had no clue. Like, there's nothing. People always say, oh, sometimes it's good to be thrown into the fire. Well, this was one of those situations because we had nothing pre-planned. Everything, was just everything that was coming was just from us. It was just like a spur of the moment type thing. And, we win the Kentucky game, and then we get to the second round against Murray State. That's really when we started to, put things together and be like, hey, there's a chance for the Peacocks to keep this thing going. So that's when we started, having the pre-planned things. That's when, I don't know if you saw it, the Big Bird meme. Yep. I did that. And then for the Purdue game too, the SpongeBob meme with the my leg guy getting thrown out of the Krusty Krab. I did that too. But, we finally started, like, I didn't have anything ready for the Kentucky game because, we were so behind getting there the day of and things like that. And then we were kind of just thrown into it. And then when we saw that road kind of open, we were like, okay, let's try and see if we can take advantage of it. Similar to the way, you go back to when UMBC knocked off Virginia and they made their run. You go back and look at their social media accounts. They had more fun than anybody. I think they had more fun than us. I mean, we tried to do our best, keep doing memes and retweeting and liking everybody because, we had the whole nation behind us. And, UMBC was kind of a groundwork for that because, there are times on social media where you need to take things seriously, but in a time like this, you're making a Cinderella run to the Elite Eight. Have fun with it. And, that's what we tried to do.
Without question. And I remember when they were doing it, it was in like how you guys tried to mimic that. It was like just being a fan, right?
Yeah.
Like you're already a small town school. Like you guys, I think, what was it? You guys were not even recognized on social media. You didn't have the check mark. And then you guys blew up in like, what was it? 7 or 8 times the followers that you guys got within that 2-week radius or something astronomical like that. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but, and then just how were you guys able to translate that after you getting through Indianapolis and being like, all right, now let's actually create something that nothing has ever happened and actually win another game and then actually say the Final Four is actually realistic? Because with the Florida Gulf Coast and even, I can't remember the 15 seed right now, but or it was, who was last year? Crap. I'm blanking. I'm doing an awful job right now, but, but both of those teams also had a lead in their Sweet 16 game before falling short. Can you just tell me what was going on in those moments of like, wait a minute, we just beat Purdue and I'm in the Elite Eight?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I just want to go back to your point from before. Because we had looked before the tournament started as kind of like, we'll see how far this thing goes. We had 2,999 followers on Twitter on the men's basketball page before the start of the tournament. I just looked right now. We're up to 37,000.
Holy smokes.
So that was, and
10 times the amount. Yeah. That's wicked.
Yeah. And, that's a labor of everybody. I mean, Doug was the one that does the tweeting in game. Steve Connolly does all the video stuff. I did mostly Instagram stuff, but after the game, I would do Twitter as well. And, even guys here on campus, not all of us went. It was kind of like a split squad kind of thing. The 3 of us were on the road. And then my other boss, Chris Aliano, one other GA, Trevor Clifton, and the marketing guy, Andrew Sahane, really were here handling all those watch parties that you probably saw on Twitter and everything. And, everybody bought into it. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing to take away from it is that, as you mentioned, we are a small school. We are a extremely small school. Our campus is cut in half by a road. You have to take a bridge from one side to the other. There's I don't want to say that it's not glamorous here, but you know what, you come into St. Peter's University and you kind of know that you got to grind it out. And that's really what it was. And really, to your point, it's kind of a testament to what the team was too. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the articles and everybody listening, seen the articles. St. Peter's had no 4, 5, 3-star recruits. It was just, it's a bunch of guys that really came in. They fit the system well. They fit Shaheen's system very well. And they all put their heads down and said, listen, a lot of basketball teams now base everything off their offense. That's not what St. Peter's was. St. Peter's was always a defensive-minded team, and they will take that defensive intensity and try and then beat you offensively. That was always the question. There were points during the season where St. Peter's struggled to score the basketball, which unfortunately happened in the Elite Eight game, and then they got bounced. But there were times where the defense was so good that it turned into offense. And that was really the calling card for this St. Peter's team. And, you talk to any of the student athletes. It's funny. I'll tell you a story. I was talking to the Drame brothers one day. It was after the Purdue game. So, we were still riding the high of the Purdue game. It was the day after. So, you get a day off in the NCAA tournament, but it's not really a day off because you still have to go to the arena and you have to do all this media attention and open practice and everything like that. So we were there that day. And I was talking to the Drames, and we had just got done with the press conference part. And one of them had come up and said, one of those reporters asked me, if we were scared. Why would we be scared? It's just basketball. And that was truly how everybody on this team, which is crazy to me, that is truly how everybody looked at it. Shaheen's famous quote, what am I nervous for? It's just basketball.
Yep. After the Kentucky game. Exactly.
Yeah. But like, that's truly like what this team felt. That's not just, Shaheen putting on a face for the media. That's not just the players going up and answering their questions. They truly believe that. They truly believe that, what? At the end of the day, we're just playing a game. And all the pressure is not on us. We're the Cinderella team. The pressure was always on the Kentucky, the Murray States, the Purdue's. We didn't have any pressure. And I think that's really worked out for them.
Yeah. And with that being said, like, it wasn't like they played like a Cinderella, though.
Yeah.
They dictated those first 3 games from start to finish. They made all 3 teams play your guys' brand of basketball. Game was slowed down. Defense made it ugly. And then in that Kentucky game, Banks, Eddard caught fire, both had 20 plus points, and the offense started to click a little bit. But in those other 2 games, it was a very defensive oriented, which was what you described as the team's mentality. So for you, do you think the emotions just ended up taking over in that Carolina game? What do you think? Or do you think North Carolina just said, we are not going to be the next one to end up being a part of this story?
Right. I mean, looking at it from UNC's side, UNC changed a lot of narratives after the tournament. For Hubert Davis to go in and make it as far as UNC did, I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. I know personally a few people, in college basketball, it was more than a few people, honestly, had questions about Hubert Davis and not only his coaching style, but his effectiveness, because UNC, they fell all the way to, I believe it was the 8 line. I forget off the top of my head. They had fallen all the way down, and, people were starting to question, did they leave UNC in the right hands after Roy left?
And you have to remember, they were on the bubble before they really got hot towards the end of the year. They were easily predicted to actually be on the outside looking in until they got hot those last 2 weeks of the regular season that led into the tournament too.
Yeah. And I think now from a UNC perspective, I think Hubert Davis has shut all those people up. And I'm happy for him because he's a great guy, and that program is fantastic. But, it was getting through what the Peacocks went through. You look at the first game in Kentucky, they faced Oscar Tshiebwe. Tshiebwe still had 30 and 16. Like, that is absolutely wild to me. As a person, you have 30 and 16 and your team still loses. You move on to the Murray State game. They had a decent amount of bigs as well. You move to the Purdue game. They had Zach Edey. It was, I don't want to say that St. Peter's eventually got worn down by bigs, but you're going through all of that. And then you finally get to a game where you have to face Armando Bacot. I mean, he's just an animal. He is unreal. And seeing him operate in person, I mean, he's got now the most double doubles in ACC history, or damn near close to it. I mean, he is just unreal. And like I said, getting to see him work in person, and it was a lot clicking for UNC at the right time. They would get the ball down low to Bacot. Caleb Love had a great tournament. Brady Manick had a great tournament as well. He when he catches fire from 3, you saw that in the game against St. Peter's. It's a shame that the slipper has to fall off the foot at some time. And, the one thing that I didn't want for these guys, for the coaching staff, for the players, I didn't want it to be a blowout. But, you win 3 games in the tournament. That's certainly something to hang your hat on.
Absolutely. And I want to now transition to what has happened since now.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
almost turned into like a full rebuild for you guys.
Yeah.
5 out of your top 6 players have already entered the portal. Dougie Buckets has already moved on. He said he's heading toward to Bryant. And then with the breaking news today, you guys have announced that you guys are going to bring in Bashir Mason from Wagner. I just wanted to get your initial reaction. I don't know how much you can actually elaborate on and give your full opinion on it, being in St. Peter's athletic department. but just give me, what is the sense of St. Peter's now after all of this has transpired?
One of the biggest things that Shaheen was asked about when the run came to an end was that, what's going to happen? And he said, the one thing that I don't want to happen is I don't want this mass exodus from St. Peter's. If he did move on at the time, he didn't want all the players to follow him. Unfortunately for St. Peter's, that has not happened. But from a perspective of just college basketball, I can say this: I don't blame anybody. Shaheen moves on, gets probably, a significant pay upgrade, and gets to go back to his alma mater. For him, that meant the world. And I think everybody always knew, that's where it would end up. In terms of the players, why not enter the transfer portal? Because you can always come back like Casey Nadefo did this year. Mm-hmm. Casey was in the transfer portal up until it was almost like September. And then all of a sudden, my boss walks in the office one day and he's like, oh, guess who's back? And Casey was down shooting in the gym. So, for these guys and college basketball in 2022 and on, I don't blame anybody for wanting to get themselves into a better position. These guys came into St. Peter's and dreamed of a moment like this. Now they finally have it. Why not try and see if you could take advantage of it?
Without question. And just to piggyback off of the Shaheen hiring, as we're both Seton Hall alums, so like for you, it's not like the end of the world as we're going from one school to the other school.
Yeah.
But so I was actually there last week for the presser.
Nice.
So, and one thing that really just it was magical. I don't know if you were there, but the whole team showed up, right? And
yes, they did, yeah.
He took the initiative to actually say, I am not here because of myself. I am here because of what has transpired in these last couple of weeks from these 15 young men. Yeah. And I think that was just a true class act by what has transpired. And it kind of brought everything full circle because they really showcased how much of a family your guys' team really was. And they had that final break at Seton Hall. Seton Hall gave them the standing ovation that they rightfully deserved. But it was just a surreal atmosphere, in my opinion, just being there and was able to understand of what really happened, getting a closer look of what I didn't get to see on TV.
So of course. Yeah. And I mean, I sidebar, I was not there because I was too busy working on Shaheen's goodbye video. So I didn't get to go. But I did watch the stream and I did see that. And really that got a lot of national attention because you see coaches leave one school and go to another school and have press conferences. You never see that. I mean, granted, yeah, Jersey City to South Orange is maybe about a half hour. But you know what? They didn't have to go. They could have said, you know what? Shaheen's moving on. Some of us are going to move on. The run was great, but at the end of the day, all good things come to an end. But they didn't. Instead, all the players, all the coaches, they were all there. And it's also a testament to the type of person that Shaheen is as well. To take that time out and say, I'm not here if it's not for these guys, which, by the way, that's another conversation because you could just tell Shaheen is a tremendous coach. So he could have made it work no matter what. So that's him being a little bit humble. So I'll sit here and give him his due. But and for him not only once, but twice to stop the crowd and say, I know we can do better than that because that's what these kids deserve. And I'm happy that they got that moment because they deserved that moment. And I was happy that Shaheen was able to give it to him.
Absolutely. But now let's talk about the new hiring. I know it's been only a couple hours, but I know we talked about it before we actually really came on. I like the hiring. I think it's a smart decision. I know I can't remember his name already. Bashir Mason. Had to look it up real quick. I knew it was Bashir. I totally forgot the last name. But for Mason, he's had the success at Wagner, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, just being absolutely dominant in the NEC. Mm-hmm. But they haven't fully gotten the job done to get them into the NCAA tournament. Just give me your initial reaction. I like the hiring. He's a Jersey City native. It's going to be because he's going to be able to recruit and talk about the Jersey and New York identity that Shaheen really brought and really can pick up off of what Shaheen was preaching.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's really what it comes down to, right? When you're at a school like this, I think it always comes down to either you're going to promote from within or you're going to get somebody who is well respected around the area and can recruit well around the area from maybe a lower division or maybe even a lateral move. And you can debate, coming from the NEC to the MAC, whether that's a lateral move or a step up. You could debate that until you're blue in the face. But really, for Bashir Mason, he took the Wagner job when he was like 28 years old.
Extremely young.
And he stepped into that, and he stepped into a program that needed some help. And by the time those 10 years was up, he got them, I'm not going to say he got them to the pinnacle because unfortunately, for him and his teams, he was not able to win any NEC conference championships to get to the postseason. But as you mentioned, in these past few years, he's done a tremendous job of not only recruiting, but keeping guys in the program. And I think that's what's going to be huge here as he comes over to St. Peter's. And really just for him, like you mentioned, it's a homecoming back to Jersey City. And I think that meant a lot to him. Similar to the way Shaheen goes to Seton Hall and it's a homecoming there. For him to come to Jersey City and try and keep some semblance of a nucleus together while contending in the MAC for the years to come, I think is going to be something interesting to watch.
Absolutely. So now I'm going to throw you on the spot.
Sure.
Give me a realistic expectation with all of these guys in the portal, new head coach. What is a success in your eyes for the Peacocks this upcoming year?
As you sit here right now, it's a tough question because there are so many uncertainties. You've just filled one with your head coaching vacancy, which I think is a good hire. There are guys now in the transfer portal, and the beauty of the transfer portal, as I mentioned before, is that if you don't find a new home, you could always come back. Correct. So you'll see how that plays out. As of right now, there are two very talented freshmen on this team that haven't, made up their mind yet in Juju Murray and Clarence Rupert. Clarence Rupert made such an impact that he was starting down the end of the year and into the NCAA tournament. And Juju is that really shifty point guard that, I believed for a majority of this year could really start as a true freshman for this Peacocks team. He's shifty. He has handles.
Has a different change of pace that Matthew Lee didn't have.
Yes. And he's got that in the bag. So as of right now, those two guys are still in the program. So, when I talk about keeping that nucleus together, maybe that is some guys coming back that don't find other homes in the transfer portal. But it's keeping the Juju Murrays and the Clarence Rupert that really, if that does stay intact, I don't think there's going to be that much fall off for St. Peter's in terms of like conference play and like normal play into maybe a conference tournament. And who knows, as you get into Atlantic City next year for the MAC tournament, who knows? We'll see what happens. Iona is always going to be there at the top with Rick Pitino, and he can recruit very well. But it's going to be. I'm not going to sit here and say there's not going to be a drop off. And if there isn't a drop off, I think it's going to be a testament to a lot of people that either are going to come in, like the Bashir Masons, or the people that decide to stick it out.
Without question. And as a peacock, you got to let them fly, as Mark Wahlberg so eloquently says.
Yes.
But you're also a major college basketball savant. You're one of the few people that I go to when talking college ball. And because, hey, you got to put credit when credit is due. You've had the pleasure of being when we did our March Madness breakdown last year. That was something crazy that we did. And
that is true. That is true.
But I want to get your overall take of the tournament as well as the Final Four. I got all of my picks wrong that I picked last week. I had Duke winning it all. I thought it was destiny for Coach K. And of course, North Carolina stood in the way. And then a Kansas team that really just found different ways to win. They beat Villanova ugly. And then they make the historic comeback against North Carolina when many thought they were dead in the water. About midway through the first half, that I personally thought I was ready to turn it off.
Same. So was I.
I was ready, up 20. I thought, wow, they're going to show nothing. Came back, won the title. Just give me your overall perspective on what you have seen in this NCAA tournament.
I mean, it was, in my opinion, one of the more memorable ones we've had in quite some time, and that's not even saying that much because every time we get to March, there's always something that happens. But this March specifically, as we kind of got through, of course, St. Peter's making a tremendous run, but then you get down to that Final Four and you have the UNC Duke matchup, which, as you said, kind of felt like destiny, which is crazy that then destiny let UNC win that game. But then you look at the other side of the bracket with Kansas and Villanova. Villanova losing Justin Moore was huge. It was huge in that game, and you could tell because Caleb Daniels had a tremendous game being thrust into the starting lineup, but it's just not the same. Like if Caleb Daniels gives you that as the sixth man off the bench, then you're saying to yourself, Villanova might win that game.
Yeah, and they made Gillespie as uncomfortable I've ever seen a team make him look.
Right.
And I think that was because of Moore.
No small feat.
Yeah, and that is, I think a lot of that had to do because he didn't have his partner in crime with Moore on the court.
Yeah, and then you look at Kansas, and honestly, they were one of the most fundamentally sound teams heading into the tournament. I look at Kansas. I looked at Villanova that way before the Justin Moore injury. There were a few other Gonzaga I looked at that way, but I told you before the show started that I'm done with them. I'm not picking them anymore. Forget it. Done. Brackets busted every year. I'm tired of Gonzaga losing. I think Mark Few is a good coach, but for some reason they get to March and they cannot put it together.
That's because they play the tough non-conference schedule. Then they play 20 layups.
Right.
And they win probably 19 of the 20. St. Mary's usually gets them once. Maybe BYU gives them a game.
Yeah.
But other than that, once they get into the tournament, they haven't played those games that you really need to see. That's why I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah. I mean, you have a team with that much talent, and you get bounced as early as Gonzaga did. It's a tough look for them. But hopefully they prove me wrong because now I'll start not picking them and then they'll go out and they'll win the championship next year. So clip this if they do, because then I'll get my magic 8-ball out or whatever. But back to that Kansas Villanova stuff. Those were one of the teams like going into this tournament that I actually like truly believed in. I thought Baylor had some holes, and you saw that in their loss. But you take a look at Kansas, perimeter shooting, down low. They had everything covered from Abaji to McCormick to Brown. They covered all their bases, and you could see how complete of a team they are because, as you mentioned, you take a look at a team like that, you go down into half, down to like 20 points. A lot of those teams, a lot of other teams in the country would be like, you know what, guys, it was a great run. We made it to the championship game. but down 20 points is difficult. That's not what they did. They came out and they just stifled UNC. And that's a testament to not only the players, but I think from a Kansas perspective as well. I think Bill Self has been one of the more underrated and underappreciated coaches. When you talk about head coaches, I don't necessarily know if he's one of the first ones that comes to your mind. But now I think he will be after getting Kansas to the promised land.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that people have come into question with Self, I don't think they had the issue of him being a great coach. I think it was more of Kansas underachieving when it got to the tournament.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't won since 2008.
Yeah.
You start and they were always the team to beat out of the Big 12 until Baylor had finally shown some rigor these last couple of years.
Right.
And they were always on the 1 or 2 line, and they couldn't get even to like that Elite 8 area, which was kind of showing the red flag of like, is this really going to work? How much longer does Self really have and want to be at Kansas? Yeah. The recruiting was not as great as it had been in recent years, but I think Remy Martin from Arizona State was the true catalyst of everything. He came in, got hurt, and then came in off the bench and was that spark plug that the team really was looking for down the stretch. But it's a true testament to him. I think you're 100% right. He's gonna finally get the true credit that he deserves.
Yeah.
And then for me, like I went 0 for 4. All 4 teams of my teams didn't even make it to the Final Four. I had UCLA cutting down the nets. North Carolina spoiled that party. I actually had Baylor was the only team I had right out of the 1 seeds. Yeah. I had Baylor losing to Carolina because I thought, again, with I can't think, was it Chechua? I can't even say his name.
Chamachachua, yeah.
Yeah, not playing that. You were going to finally see Peacock be a beast, and he was. So, but yeah, I had Auburn. Auburn lost in the second round. Let's see, Tennessee, they lost in the second round. Gonzaga lost in the Sweet 16. UCLA lost in the Sweet 16. Yeah, I couldn't even get a team into the Elite 8. So
yeah.
I was
UCLA was one of those teams too that I thought was fundamentally sound in that area with
and they were a team that were just you could tell that they were not interested until the tournament really started. Yeah. Then they barely got through the first game. They looked great in their second round game. Yeah. And then like that North Carolina game was one to watch. You could going back and forth. There was the true game of like 2 blue bloods actually what you would want to see.
Right.
And then I was like, of course they come up short. So, but it is what it is. But I think this Final Four was unique that it had 4 blue bloods. And the Coach K stat, I know you've probably seen this, but North Carolina was his first loss ever, his final regular season loss ever, and his last loss ever. Yeah. Just how crazy is that to kind of like just behold that North Carolina is the reason of
and you want to talk about things coming full circle. That's one of those things. I mean, for him to have all those battles with UNC throughout the years with Roy Williams, and then for it to, Roy retired before him, which, it was always going to be down to the wire who was going to go first. And Roy decided to retire first. And then, again, I think it goes back to it's a huge testament to who Hubert Davis is and what he's been able to continue doing at UNC now and send Coach K off into the sunset.
Absolutely. And I think about one thing about Davis, like he was a great analyst at ESPN and then like they brought him back to North Carolina. And I was like, what is he doing? Like he doesn't have to like do anything. Like all he has to do is just talk basketball. But obviously they had a true plan laid out at North Carolina and something crazy, something awesome. But I think that was a true testament of how the NC college basketball scene has really transpired and unfolded. And Rich, I want to actually thank you so much for coming on today, talk some college hoops, talk a lot of Peacocks. But before I let you go, I want to, as a Seton Hall fan, I want to I want to, because I had heard some underlying things that the Willard leaving was kind of in the works for a little while before, which kind of transpired that before even the Big East tournament started, and then you could totally see the team was not playing for him really in that debacle that happened in San Diego against TCU. What do you think of Willard moving on to Maryland, and then your final thoughts on the Shaheen hiring before I let you go?
You know, I go back to even before this year, before the end of this year, before a few years, when he was the finalist for the Virginia Tech job. And I go back to that and I say, okay, he turned that down because at the time, it really didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense for him to take that Virginia Tech job. That's not what happened this time.
He turned down Florida to take the
Yep.
Maryland job.
Right. You get to now and you say, okay, you take a look at, it's funny. Every seat, you see it on Twitter all the time, but it's like painfully true. Up until this point, every Seton Hall season is the same arc. It's the same story. It's just got different characters and it's got different players, but it's the same story told 5 times in a row. They come out of the gate really hot, get a few great wins to start the season. They have a terrible January, and then they level out in February. You get into March, and it's a mixed bag. It's every time. It's every year under Kevin Willard. It's the same thing that happens every time. So you started to get to that January this year, and you're saying to yourself, you're like, what the heck is going on? This team is not this bad. It's not this bad on paper. You're watching the team and they're not this bad. They're not either getting the right bounces or they're not getting the good luck or something's going on.
They weren't competitive though, really either.
Yeah. There were points. Oh, believe me, there were points. There were points where you were watching games and you were like, okay, yeah, you can kind of squeak this game out a little bit. I forget what it was. It was either the Butler game or the Marquette game. Like there was one game where I was like, okay, they probably should have won that one, and then they lost. But then the other ones were like, all right, what are we doing? Like, there's no offensive flow. The ball is stagnant. It's not moving. Aiken came out of the lineup, and the ball got cement on it. You couldn't get it out. Rodin's trying to take contested mid-ranges, and you're just like, okay, you can't get the ball down low to Ike. He can't do anything at the rim. And then you move on to February and you're like, okay, you reached the even out period. There were some good games, some bad games, and you get to March. Then you get to the Big East tournament and you're like, all right, the game against who did they play the first? I'm drawing a complete.
Did we play
first game? Wasn't it Georgetown?
Georgetown. And
we
played Georgetown and we squeaked by.
Yeah. And you squeaked by Georgetown.
We had no business of winning that game. They outplayed us for all 40 minutes, but we made a couple plays at the end.
Right. And, you squeak by Georgetown and you're like, okay, what in the world is going to happen against UConn tomorrow night? I am scared because yet again, they're playing in the 9:00 game because you can't get out of it if you're Seton Hall. They're married to the 9:00 game at Madison Square Garden. So you get to that game, and it was, again, one of those situations where the offense struggled, and you couldn't really – the ball was sticking. You couldn't move it. All right. Then you get to the tournament. I don't even know what I watched for 40 minutes of basketball. I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't tell you what I watched. I was in a bar by that time, we were in Indianapolis that time. I was like, all right, great. I'm going to go to a bar. I'm going to bring everybody from St. Peter's. We're going to sit down. We're going to have a great time. I'm going to watch the game. I was depressed 10 minutes into the game. I get my first beer. I start drinking my first beer. They're already down 10. I get my second beer. They're down 20. I'm like, what is going on? And again, there were so many things. There were so many things you could point to in that game. But like you saw, you might have, like, the writing on the wall was starting to form. And then after that TCU game, you knew it was happening. You knew it was done. And the thing that got me was the post game press conference. The whole, now I'm going to go talk to my agent and see what's going on. I haven't talked to him yet. Folks, I hate to be that guy. That's not true. Okay. That's just plain and simple. Not that true. You don't not talk to your agent. And then the first day you lose, oh, I'm on a plane to Maryland 2 days later. Come on. So, and then, okay, Willard leaves. He goes to Maryland, which, you know what?
I don't like that for him. He is going to be in a full rebuild in the hardest conference in basketball.
Right. No, it's going to be.
I thought if he goes to Florida,
yeah,
you still have a couple pieces. Yeah. You don't really have to recruit because it's Florida. They're going to come out and play because what is it? It's Miami and it's Florida State. And like you should win that recruitment 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Which was why I was surprised he turned that down, because they offered him supposedly close to 5.
Yeah. I think from a Kevin Willard perspective, he's always kind of prided himself in these last 10 or so years as being that, East Coast basketball guy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where he wanted to stick. And I think the fit in Maryland is good. It's just, as you said, he's got to be prepared to lose, and he's got to be prepared to grind it out for those first few years, because it's similar to when he took over Seton Hall, but it's not nearly as bad. Yes. When he took over Seton Hall, it was an undesirable job, and it was poor.
Yes.
He's in a better situation now with Maryland. But again, as it's started to come down to in the past few years with Kevin Willard, it's going to be, one, is he going to be able to recruit? And number 2, is he going to be able to surround himself with the coaching staff, which I believe he's done. So I will give him credit for that. Is he going to be able to surround himself with a coaching staff that is going to be able to reach all of the players? And I think he's got that step out of the way. He brings back Tony Skinn, who, it was a shame when he left Seton Hall as a Seton Hall fan. You saw his presence not only as a coach, but as a recruiter.
Yes.
I'll argue that
he can recruit.
Yeah.
He can recruit.
I'll argue that his bigger job is going to be recruiting over coaching. And then you bring over Grant Billmeyer as well. So I believe he's surrounded himself now with the right tools. Now it's going to be, if he can, and how quickly the turnaround for Maryland basketball is going to be.
Absolutely. And then Shaheen, it's slam dunk. I think it's a slam dunk. You can't do anything wrong, right? And listen, the one thing that he was great at Seton Hall is that he can recruit the living daylight out of our area.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to him, of course, playing in the area, growing up. He's a New York City kid. He doesn't shy away from that. He's a New York City kid that played basketball in New Jersey. As he said, I got guys from New York and New Jersey. We're not scared of anything. So he's going to bring that same mentality to Seton Hall, because if there's one thing that I could tell you about Shaheen Holloway, is that, I don't know if I can curse, but
go ahead, let it out.
He ain't no bullshitter. Okay.
Oh, no, he tells you.
He tells you how
it is.
He tells you how it is. So when he stands up on that stage and tells you that this is too important for him to mess up because it means that much to him, I believe that 100%.
Without question. And I think he's actually going to find out that we're actually in a little bit more of a rebuild phase than he actually thinks, instead of a win now mentality. I think we are going to potentially struggle this upcoming season.
I will say, though, keeping his ability to keep Tyrese Samuel is huge.
That is huge.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat. I think it'll be interesting. Maybe steal over a couple Peacocks from the portal. Just kidding.
Who knows?
Maybe. Knows? But Rich, I want to thank you so much for joining me today on the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. It's always a pleasure. Hope you are doing well and stay well with Peacock Nation, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you know me, I'm always available to come on and talk with you. So I'm happy I could do that today.
Oh, always a pleasure to have you on. We'll definitely have you on again soon. Everybody, look out for more content. We have some potential interviews in the works. I can actually officially make this announcement. Dean Blandino from Fox Sports officiating. He came on last year. He will be coming on hopefully either in the coming weeks. He has accepted to come on the show. We are actually also in the works with a couple other people that I am not allowed to release yet. But
secrecy.
Had to keep a secrecy because their agents will kill me. But but stay tuned. Also, I'm going to have a little bit of a Masters video coming out some point this week with Scotty Scheffler's absolutely dominant performance at Augusta National and the return of the GOAT, Tiger Woods, actually showing up and showing out. And he has already confirmed he will be at St. Andrews. So enjoy your week, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Final Whistle Sports Podcast.